And our opening words this morning are by George Kimmick Beach. Everything begins on the verge of awareness. The dawn is not, and then is. Sleep is, and then is not. In between is the awakening. The passage of thin light between breaks open the day. The passage of thin sound between flows into the day. Too soon the numbing rumble of traffic swells, the day glares. Let the soft haze hang again across the row of morning. Wait upon the narrow moment, the first awareness of being in between. Live days and seasons on the thin edge of dawn in praise that every single thing begins now. This prayer is by Teresa Cooley. In this time of anticipated spring, let us allow ourselves to extend the anticipation, to value the time of budding before blooming, of seeding before sprouting. This is a time of revelation, the revealing of that which is eternal, which we see every year, but still need to be reminded to see in a new way. There is also the revelation of that which is new. Every spring we encounter something never before seen. It is that very newness which embodies hope and potential for the wholeness which is yet to be. Let us allow spring to unfold slowly, that we may appreciate the true mystery of rebirth and renewal. Amen. Today we recognize the coming of spring by celebrating the spring equinox. As we honor the four directions, we will be returning the four hangings at the back of the sanctuary. The fabric hangings were created 3 years ago, inspired by Kesa, traditional Buddhist monks' robes. In Buddha's time, the robes were likely pieced together from cast-off fabrics. Our Kesa are made from recycled fabric, colored with natural dyes. The panels in each Kesa symbolize north, south, east, west, and the middle. And so they fit in well with our pagan tradition of calling upon the four directions. The UUMH Kesa, made by members of this community in 2011, were originally dedicated to the people of Japan after they experienced a devastating earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear accident at Fukushima. This past week marked the 3rd anniversary of that tragedy. And as our Cape Cod community actively works at shutting down our own Pilgrim power plant, which has the same design as Fukushima, we honor and remember those affected by that event 3 years ago. We make this remembrance part of our ritual this morning as we call upon the four directions. So I invite you to stand and face the back of the sanctuary as best you are able for this ritual.
Spirits and powers of the South, place of the child, of trust and innocence, step through the portal of water and help us find a safe place to express our emotions, to share from the heart when we speak in this sacred circle. Spirits of the South, welcome.
Spirits and powers of the West, place of introspection, place of transformation and change, of death that is not ending, but a transition to a new beginning. Step through the portal of earth. Teach us how to stay physically healthy and grounded, and help us to access the healer that resides in each one of us. Spirits of the West, welcome.
Spirits and powers of the North, of our ancestors and all those who have gone before us, place of knowledge and wisdom, of the great buffalo who reminds us to give away to each other so that abundance will grace our lives. Step through the portal of air and purify us with your strong winds. Spirit of the North, welcome.
Spirits and powers of the East, place of enlightenment and illumination. Step through the portal of fire and help us to have perspective like the great eagle, to seek a vision of our own true purpose and to honor the Spirit in each of us. Spirits of the East, welcome.
As above, so below, we call for you to be here now, spirits and powers of the earth and sky, welcome. Spring, the triumph of light over darkness, victory of newness and growth and warmth, vanquishing cold. We too know coldness and darkness within us, as it is in our world. Let us light our candles and build our altar, symbolizing our hopes that spring may take place in our hearts as it warms our world. By Elizabeth Tarbox, entitled Between Seasons. Tiny sparkles from diamond drops of ice high up in the naked branches of the maple and elm reflect the sun through my window and work at distracting me. Beneath their frozen coats, the tiny buds of spring wait to be born. But winter has one last picture to show me before spring comes laughing to the trees, as if they were working together in this month between seasons. Sunshine, catbirds, and crocuses for spring, and icicles hanging on pine needles, and cardinals picking sunflower seeds off the snow-drifted bird feeder for winter. The two seasons call forth from me a great amen. Here we are then, between seasons, not knowing for sure what to do next. Do we conserve and play it safe against an unexpected onslaught, striking us like one last winter blast? Or do we cast off our coats and take a risk, daring to embrace a spring which is not quite here. Thank God we have each other and this place of worship to come to when we need to make decisions in our search for both security and renewal. May we remember in the chilliest winter storm or the balmiest spring morning that this place is here for us, that here we share in creation's love, no matter what the season. It's funny when I search for a reading that will be just right, and I find the perfect one, and then realize that I used the same reading at this time last year. But it's not really all that surprising, because there are some readings that I just need to hear over and over, and some readings that I just need to hear at particular times. Our reading from this morning, Between Seasons, is one of them. It's a reading that I turn to again and again at this time of year, which is the season of not yet spring. Not yet spring is not the same as winter. It's its own season. It comes between the more clearly understood seasons of definitely winter and definitely spring. We're in it now. And so I know you know what I'm talking about when I speak of it being not yet spring. In Vermont, not yet spring is called something else. It's called mud season. Jim Collins of Yankee Magazine explains. He says, in northern New England, there are really 5 seasons. Some would say Indian summer and January thaw, too, which add to the rhythm of most years, but they're inconsistent and ethereal. Mud season, though, is real, its own thing. He describes leaving the house in the morning on a hard-packed dirt road and coming home in the afternoon after it's warmed a bit to find a stretch of mush that will eat your car whole. He describes trucks getting stuck, deliveries and house calls taking double the time, and enormous ruts made in the wet earth that harden and stick around as evidence of mud season right through the summer. But he admits to a positive side too. I like the smell of mud, he says, of the frozen earth letting go, of the melting snow, of the boiling sap and wood smoke that go hand in hand with the warming breeze. We've made it through again. Spring is coming. Spring is coming. It's kind of hard to believe it sometimes. When I was at my sister's this week, she put her jacket on and was getting ready to go outside while I settled in to get started on this sermon. Because my sister doesn't have a voice, sometimes we have trouble communicating. I had to ask her a second time what she was going outside to do. I couldn't make sense of what she had expressed to me. But this time it wasn't so much that I didn't understand what she was trying to communicate, it was that I couldn't comprehend what she was expressing, that her snowdrops were coming up. She was going outside to clear space for the snowdrops and crocuses that were starting to pop through the soil, to carefully pull back layers of decomposing leaves to let a little more sunlight get at them. I couldn't believe it because just the day before, I had driven up to Boston in a snow squall. But spring is coming. I believe that we are desperate for spring this year. It's been a long winter. It's been a hard winter for many of us. Many of us have lost loved ones during these cold, dark months. Some of us have suffered injuries, been isolated, contended with depression. Most of us have spent more time than we liked shoveling or being stuck in our houses. We've fallen on ice, canceled church, watched too much television. We've been cold. When that groundhog saw his shadow last month, we wanted to wring his little neck. Yes, we are desperate for spring this year. This week marks the equinox, which brings the official first day of spring. But we are New Englanders, and we know that the first calendar day of spring does not mean that it will feel like spring on that day. Sometimes we have to wait. Sometimes we need to spend a little more time between the seasons, even as the calendar tells us that a new one has come. But there are things we can do. There are things we can do to come to terms with the season we are in. We can learn to like the smell of mud. I'm only half joking when I offer this as a spiritual practice. I know that not all of us will learn to love the smell of wet earth, but there is something, maybe even just one tiny little thing, that each of us can learn to love about the season of not yet, the season of right now, even as we wish for it to be over. Maybe it's the smell of wood smoke or the warming breeze. When I was a chaplain at Mass General Hospital, faced with more heartache than I thought my own heart could bear, my bright spot was the bagels and cream cheese at the coffee kiosk on the first floor. I became a regular. I gained a lot of weight during that time, but I made it through. We experience some tough seasons in our lives. Some of them have very little good to say about them. But there is usually something. The care of a neighbor, the unexpected strength found in the muddy depths as we neared bottom, the poetry that comes through us during our darkest hours. It helps to learn to like the smell of mud, which is to say, to find the one good thing in the darkness and hold on to it. There are things we can do. There are things we can do to beckon to and coax out spring. We can go into the garden and push aside layers of leaves to let some more light in. We can spend some time tending to the fragile shoots fighting for the sun. When I say this to you, I fully recognize that the spring we need to nurture may not just be the spring outside, which Mother Nature controls, but also the spring inside, the spring we have some say over. There are other times of year that we may have to do this too. Times of grief and fear and loss and change. when we need to nurture the seedlings of healing, forgiveness, and strength. But this is the amazing time of year when what we are experiencing inside is also being reflected in the world around us. A season when what is required of us is the same thing being required of nature. A process of honoring the hope and the light and the growth more than we honor the despair and the dark and the smallness. A process of celebrating that which is to come, almost pretending that it is already here, as a way of tiding us over until it actually arrives. We are beseeching the coming of spring. We are calling upon warmth. We are inviting forgiveness, healing, and wholeness. And we are creating a place for it in our lives. This morning, we built an altar for spring. We made room in our sanctuary for the idea of spring. We acknowledged our need and desire for it. We built a space to welcome it, and now it can arrive. What else shall we make space for? There are things we can do. We can sit together while we wait. Waiting is easier when we are not alone. Mud season is easier when someone else comes along and helps us to pull or push our car out of the mush. Not yet spring is easier when we combine all of our energies to build one common altar of hope. And there is one other thing we can do. We can celebrate each small step forward. I don't know what those steps will be for each of you, but I am here to celebrate them with you if you want me to. Just as I celebrate each small step towards spring, each crocus opening its purple cup, each bud greening on the branch, each lengthening hour of light at the end of the day. Spring is coming. Amen, and blessed be.